Okay, this is a video to show a possible repair of this indirect water heater. It's a triangle tube Smart 40. And here's the problem that we were having. First of all, the hot water was too hot. And when I came down to check on it, because normally the way that you test the hot water, or the way you set the hot water, is with a dial, what I had noticed is that the dial was set okay, but that the temperature gauge was way too hot. It was like 150. Okay, that's way too hot. And what I noticed was, I noticed moisture or water around the perimeter of this ceiling plate. And weeping, you might say. So I knew that that wasn't right. So I disconnected it. So here's the connection to the boiler, the call for heat for the hot water zone, the indirect tank hot water zone. If these two are shorted together, that's a call for heat. This extra moisture was creating essentially a short circuit condition. So first thing I did was disconnect this, because the furnace was running 24/7 because of this call for heat, and the water must have been heated up to as high as the water would be allowed on the boiler. Okay, very dangerous. Anyway, we caught it after a day or two. So I started taking this apart. I pulled this apart. It comes apart pretty easy. Couple screws that on this cover and then you can pull this out. Then you have access to some of these little plastic plugs, and then this pops off. And you can tell that there's been water damage to this aquastat. It's a thermostat, but it's for water. This is the sensing unit, which goes down into something called a drywell. Okay, now this also was wet. Okay, it wasn't overflowing. There was just beads of water and obviously a problem. Okay, so somehow there was a water leak, and somehow the water was getting up into this aquastat, which might be toast. Or once it dries out, it might be okay. Who knows? I have no idea. But the root cause is the leak. If I replace this without replacing the leak, okay, it's just going to happen again, and probably pretty quick. Okay, so the next thing I did was, based on what I saw on the internet, I removed this tube. This is like a 30-inch tube or 29-inch tube. I almost thought it wasn't going to come out because it seemed to have an interference fit with the rest of this plumbing. But it turns out that there's a significant play here, and it does just barely, come out. The guys who installed this probably didn't know that. Okay, I probably got lucky that this wasn't dead center on top of where this extra control was placed. Okay, so I was able to get this out, no problem, because the first possible source for a leak, if I'm lucky, is this threaded area where this dry well goes down into the domestic hot water. Okay, the cold water comes in to the tank, and when it's hot, and the hot water comes out of the tank. Okay, and then this tube houses the probe, the temperature probe. Apparently, the temperature probe is not supposed to get wet, or it's not supposed to be in the domestic water, so it goes into this, what they call a drywell, and it's a tight fit, a fairly tight fit, so that there's a good transmission of heat, so it gets an accurate temperature. Okay, now what I noticed was a couple things. I noticed the threads on this did not look very good. Okay, and I cleaned them up. They still don't look very good. I might have to end up with a new drywell. Now, when you order a replacement drywell, you can also order, well, even without ordering a replacement drywell, it turns out you can order a new sealing kit, which comes with an O-ring. When I took this out, I did not find an O-ring. I don't know if the original one had an O-ring, which disintegrated. And furthermore, the little flange or shoulder where that O-ring would go looks as though it's been flattened in a certain spot or compromised. You might not be able to see it, but there's a spot there where it's flattened. Now, an O-ring might still seal, okay, because it might not need that to be perfect, okay, if it's pliable and everything. And I could order the O-ring. The O-ring kit, it's going to be a problem with delivery and what have you. It's like a $35 kit. It comes with an O-ring. It comes with some Loctite 680 sealant, which I could order on Amazon for about $25 or $26. Okay. Now, I've cleaned up these threads, but these threads are damaged. I don't know what caused that. Some form of corrosion. It does not look bad in the threaded part of the tank that this goes into, but I have cleaned that up. In this particular case, I was able to clean that up with one of these battery post hole cleaners just because it was a good fit. Oops. For the size. It was a good fit for the size of it, that's all. Okay. In other words, the diameter of that was just a little bit larger. So I was able to clean out those threads. Not that I know that will make any difference. Okay, I could have, in the simplest case, now you can see the water is actually starting to leak up again because even though I've turned off the water supply, I've even turned off the water supply to the house in an attempt to dry this well out. The water, there's still some sort of a residual leak of possibly water draining down, even though I do have a hot water faucet open to try to relieve the pressure, but there does seem to be some drain down, and I've had to, a number of times try to get that water out. But I don't think that's a serious problem. Now, what my plan is right now is because I don't have Loctite 680, I don't have this O-ring, and it's Sunday afternoon, and I want to see if I can get the hot water back. My first attempt is I'm going to put Teflon tape on these threads. I'm going to put it on what I would call generously, maybe 5 or 6 time wrap, which is what I normally do now. And I'm going to see if that will seal it, okay, because that's the number one problem here. And this water is not terribly particularly hot. It's just the hot water temperature of the domestic hot water. And it's not under tremendous pressure or anything. So, but the fact that I've used this Teflon sealant on hot water connections at the regular delivery pressure and temperature indicates that I don't see why it wouldn't work. But I'm not, for sure. The thing here is if it doesn't work, I can take all this apart, take the Teflon tape off. I can go ahead and order the O-ring. I can order the sealant, what have you. So I'm just going to give this a shot. I'm going to hit pause. I'll show it reassembled, but that's not going to prove very much, but because it'll take some time to see if this really seals. Okay, so I'm going to use the pause function right now. Okay, there's the. Sorry, the lighting, but that I've wrapped that around 5 or 6 times with the Teflon tape. Now I'll just try inserting it. I'll use the pause. Okay, I have that in finger tight. Now, I was able to get literature online. It said it should go in at 55 foot-pounds. So I'm going to hit pause. I'm going to double check that. On mine, this was a 22 millimeter, and I will try torquing this down to 55 and see how that goes. I'll use pause. Okay, I actually checked the installation instructions on the new, if you bought a new drywell, because I found those online. The actual numbers was between 30 and 40 foot-pounds. which it described as wrench tight. The key word on something like this is snug, and don't overdo it. The reason is because if it is leaking after doing it, you can always tighten it a little bit more. Once you break it, you're toast. Okay, now you can still see there is water that is in this sponge. That's the water that's already overflowed and leaked down underneath the plastic cover. I can't get all that out. So what I'm going to have to do is simply sponge all this up. I'm going to restore all the water pressure. I could even manually put on a call for heat here simply by shorting these out. And just see this in operation to see if water continues to leak out. If it does not, I think I could probably tell whether or not this is leaking or whether it's tight simply by keeping it dry and then just operating the system even before buying a new aquastat. I might try debugging the aquastat while I'm doing that in parallel, just in the event that it still works, but I think I can actually operate this system just by calling it for heat for a while and just see how the system seems to operate. So that's going to be it here. I'll probably have a part 2. I'm not going to try to do pause because this is going to be now I'm going to have to observe this over an extended period of time. Okay, thanks.